Glenn. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that. Las Vegas is a smart city, and we're here today with a panel to help celebrate that. I'd like to introduce the other two panelists. The first is Barak Weinisman. Barak is founder and general manager of Cox2M, the smart cities part of Cox Communications. He's been very active in IoT. He's been very active in making smart cities happen, in collecting smart city data. Is going to be one of our experts on this, previously with the Boston Consulting Group. And he's also led companies in Israel and also in Brazil. So let's give him a warm, let me get all three of these here. Shalom, bom dia, and welcome to Barak. And we're very fortunate to have Mike Sherwood. Mike is the Director of Technology and Innovation for the City of Las Vegas. He's an experienced strategist, IT and innovation expert, has previously held top positions in information technology in Irvine, California, and Oceanside, California. Please welcome Mike Sherwood. Thank you. So as Jeff told you, I'm with US Ignite. I'm the founder of US Ignite. It's a nonprofit. We work together with federal agencies and top corporations to help accelerate the beneficial effects of smart communities across the country. And we recently selected Las Vegas to be one of our smart communities. Why did we do that? We did that for 4 reasons. The first reason is that a community, to be a smart community, needs a terrific, strong telecommunications infrastructure. And we looked at what Cox Communications has done here in Las Vegas, the greater Las Vegas, and said, this is an area that has the infrastructure that's needed to support the giant amounts of data that the Internet of Things brings. So that was number 1. Number 2 is that we needed a strong Research One university. And as you've heard from the preceding speakers, that now exists here at UNLV. Because we believe that students doing smart city projects, faculty members getting federal grants to work on smart city projects, are one of the key success factors that we found in other smart cities. Factor number 3 is a really energized civic infrastructure. We need the Carolyn Goodmans, the Deb Marches, the Mike Sherwoods, the Joanna Wadsworths of that area to be energized and interested in making that happen. And we ended up finding exactly the right combination of civic folks to go and support the greater Las Vegas area. And fourth, we need a community that is future-oriented, one that is willing to try out autonomous vehicles, put red license plates on vehicles, be able to go and do new things to be able to make the future happen in their community. And guess what? We found that right here in the greater Las Vegas area. So with those 4 factors, we've named Las Vegas one of our smart gigabit communities, and I'm here to celebrate that today. Let's give it a round of applause for Vegas. I'd like to go and get the conversation underway. Barak, I mentioned you're in charge of smart cities for Cox.
Correct.
And in that role of smart cities for Cox, what do you think are the most important characteristics? And what really makes a city smart, and what are you doing about it?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me fine? Excellent. So yes, I run the Cox2M Commercial Internet of Things business line for Cox Communications. It's a pleasure being with you all here in such an important market for our company. And my team also owns, together with Cox Business, who is presenting here in the pavilion, the smart city space. And for us, and this will sound funny coming from a technology company, but smart city doesn't start with technology. Smart city starts with improving the life of the residents, the businesses, the communities within the city area, and helping those stakeholders and residents to realize the max potential, be as best as they can be. So if I think about the previous panel and the presentation and the goals that we've just seen, I would associate a lot of those as part of the journey of this phenomenal city becoming even smarter. I think when you do that, then technology comes as a second enabler, if you will, for that smartness. So if we take an example out of, I'm coming to you today from Atlanta, for example, where we have a great initiative for city development we call the Beltline, that improves the experience of residents and creates a lot of outdoor spaces and trails where the community can go out and enjoy. As part of that, you also have technology connecting security cameras, connecting different sensors in that environment that enable that smart city play to occur. And this is really how we think about smart cities. So we serve over 700 municipalities, and we see it as not only our right, but our obligation to help those cities become smarter. And I think it starts from three stages. The first one is what you mentioned, one of the reasons you chose Las Vegas as a smart city, as a smart community for your organization, is because you need to have the infrastructure in place. And some of it is the fiber infrastructure that we have today, but some of it is also the connectivity infrastructure of the future in terms of wireless and next generation networks, and much beyond just the connectivity itself, infrastructure such as the energy infrastructure, the water infrastructure, the traffic infrastructure. And it really requires a large partner that's invested in the community to think with the city on how to accomplish that. When you do have that in place, that unlocks some of the applications and the use cases, maybe either to make the city more efficient and effective or improve the resident experience. So today we're working with the cities on things you won't necessarily expect from a Cox Communications, things like smart water management and water metering, smart lighting and energy management, deploying wireless IoT dedicated networks and our platforms on top of that, enabling truly everyone in the community, may be education, universities, faculties, students, as well as residents, businesses, startups, to come and enjoy access to that infrastructure and help innovate together with us. I think when you have that in place, you go to what people call more formally the Smart City 3.0, where you can really drive citizen engagement and open the door to citizens to come and take advantage of that infrastructure, of those use cases, of those applications, to truly improve their quality of living, which increases their retention, increases education levels, etc., and truly makes the city a better place. So it's much more, from our perspective, much more than the technology, the gadgets, the sensors, and it seems that a lot of the discussion in smart cities focused more on those gadgets and that, rather than the bigger and more holistic transformation.
And we really appreciate that approach, and also the sponsorship of Cox for the US Ignite membership of Las Vegas. But let's turn to the architect, the master architect for what's happening here in Smart City Las Vegas. Mike, what's happening?
Well, a lot is happening. First, thank you for letting me be here this morning. There's no better city, I think, that is more aggressive and more prepared to be a smart city of the future. And I like to more use the word connected city, where you have what Jeremy described this morning, won't happen tomorrow, but drones flying your soap, dropping it off at your house, but having that infrastructure. We all live in a place where we feel has the best amenities. So when we talk about smart cities, it's really not about being smart. It's having an infrastructure, and it's having that innovation and that foundation for the future, so that as these new technologies come out, the city is ready to adopt them. Because again, we all live where there's the best schools, it's the safest neighborhood, or we like the area. If you don't have the infrastructure to support that and the connected capability to be able to provide information to citizens, to businesses, and to other jurisdictions, then you'll be behind. So we've been really aggressive the last year. We had a great autonomous shuttle. Over 40,000 visitors went around the container park, I think a mile and a quarter. That's a lot of people in a shuttle that only holds 10 people in 1 year. So a major achievement there. We're doing a lot with on-demand parking, looking at other types of aspects to make life better. It's really, it's not a technology play, it's about making the community better and about making life better for all levels of society. Excellent.
Some new things are happening, right, Mike?
A lot of things are happening. I mean, I could probably spend an hour going about all the great things that we're working on. Some of the things that we're doing right now in the Innovation District, which really is around the Fremont Street area, expands into the medical district, but we just received a federal grant. We'll be having 4 autonomous vehicles over the next 3 to 4 years operating in the medical district that will be able to move you around, like the current shuttle we had around the container park. But again, these are technologies that allow transportation to be flexible, allow transportation to be agile for the way the community needs transportation to be. You're not building something that is stagnant. You're building something that, as the city's needs change in transportation, these vehicles then can move and absorb that new transportation need wherever it transitions through the city. We're working on curb monetization. We're going to have all these autonomous vehicles in the future. How are they going to know when they can park and when they can't park? We don't want traffic jams, so we're working on using technology to provide real-time data to the Amazons and Domino's Pizzas and all the different companies that are going to be delivering curbside, and being able to provide them information so they know when the curb is available, so their autonomous vehicles know how to transition and move about the city. Additionally, I mean, there's a lot of littler projects that we're working on. We have a great new mobile app that we're continuing to develop. It's called Go Vegas, and that app is providing a lot of information on mobility, city services, and really tying in the region as a whole.
Excellent. Sounds like it's very exciting coming up here. One of the top technologies that Mary Beth talked about at the beginning was blockchain. And that blockchain is one of the, of course, hot new technologies. And in a blockchain, you have a distributed ledger where you can record transactions. Lots of people have a copy of this, so there's no one copy that can be altered or stolen, because everyone else can pull out their copies and say, ours all match, and they say this, so yours must be the one that's been altered. So it helps to prevent alteration. It helps to be able to, for example, put in digital identities in interesting ways. Let me ask Barak, do you see any interesting applications for blockchain and limitations that you could see in that technology?
Look, blockchain is a fascinating technology. I think blockchain really took off with cryptocurrencies because the beauty was that whatever you register in the ledger is actually the product that you're tracking. And that key that you now have in that ledger is the currency, is the number. The problem that I have with blockchain is that when you decouple the product from the registration, you still need to, let's say if you use it for logistics or whatever, now you have this ledger that tells you a container or a pallet or whatever happened arrived in a certain location. You still need that physical verification, that physical, you still need that intermediary that you can trust that will tell you that what's in the ledger is actually what happens in the physical world. In crypto, you didn't have that. You don't have that because if it's registered right there, that is the asset. It only exists in its digital form. So from our perspective, blockchain is a fascinating technology, especially where you need that element of trust. So the way we think about it is another technology enabler. Now, instead of having a centralized database that you need to trust the person that's holding the keys to that database, now you have a distributed database that is constantly validated by miners or by the people that are writing into that. And it comes a question in the smart city space, do we feel that that's the biggest bottleneck, right? When we look at cities that took the open data approach and opened the data to the facility, to the stakeholders, to the research community, was the biggest bottleneck that we couldn't trust the data that they provided to us? We couldn't trust the database? I don't think so. I don't think that's what has kept us. I think before we solve kind of exactly what database technology we use and how to facilitate registering data into that, which is where blockchain plays, I think we need to understand what exactly we're trying to get out of the data, what value, what is the hypothesis, what use cases are we trying to solve by using that information. And that's where I see most of the bottleneck today, and obviously the security and the privacy concerns around that. So blockchain is fascinating. I've been definitely following it very closely. If I see it as a major game changer in the current smart city space, not necessarily.
A lot of people see blockchain as sort of anti-government, the ability to be able to record things without the government being involved. But maybe the government should be involved. Mike, do you have any opinions on when and where is the right time for government to think about blockchain?
Well, we're looking at blockchain now. So we look at it in maybe a different mindset than that, is not government knowing or not knowing. It's about freedom for the individual working with the government. We all love our cities. I love Las Vegas. But when you have to do business with the city to get a permit or do a transaction, it's very cumbersome and really upsets people. I think most people's distrust of government comes from the inability for us to execute quickly and timely and provide transparency. Blockchain can provide some of those services that make it really easy for the community to transact, to get a pet license, to get a development permit. Imagine going to Home Depot, buying that water heater, and not having them go home and install it, and then go online, set up a new relationship with the city to get a permit for the water heater. Imagine being at Home Depot and then through a blockchain transaction, getting your permit as you check out of Home Depot. That's what people want. They want the government that's easy to work with, that's simplistic, that has a transaction that can be changed and followed. And so that blockchain provides some of that ability while providing protection and transparency for the transaction.
I think it's also going to be important in digital identity. People can record their identities on the blockchain, and it's an identity that can't be lost as long as there's lots of copies of the blockchain and the distributed ledger around. And it might be a new way to help foster the kinds of digital identities that you currently have in the form of passwords and usernames, or maybe some of you do have things like PHP, public and private keys, but it's going to make it a lot easier when those can be recorded on a blockchain that everybody has access to. So I think that's one of the possible future ways that that will happen also. One of the things that we found at US Ignite is that data in smart cities has much more importance, and that although, for example, Mike's title is Information Technology and Innovation, I think that my personal belief is that titles will begin to think about what the data is, who has it, how is it controlled, what are the privacy issues, because the Internet of Things is going to generate a lot more data. An autonomous vehicle can generate a gigabit per second of data about everything that's operating in that autonomous vehicle, what its LiDAR is seeing, what's going on. And as we get smart buildings, as we get smart homes, there's a lot more data to pass around. It's one of the key reasons the Cox is such a critical part of this story. And when we have that much data, I think there's a lot of policy issues that need to be thought carefully about so that we can both have the advantage of getting and using the data that we want, along with being able to protect that information. And also, since US Ignite organizes this club of smart cities, this club wants to be able to interchange data among itself and be able to say, how do my numbers on this look like compared to your numbers on that? So for that reason, US Ignite is working with an organization called Addis to be able to help standardize and create some standards for the way in which data is collected and be able to be compared. So for example, all those great charts you saw at the beginning that compared the state of Nevada with other states in terms of economics, we don't have any way of doing those comparisons in the digital smart cities world yet. So it's one of the things that we're working on, and I'm sure it's something that you're working on as well, Mike.
Yeah, we are. No, it's something for Nevada to take a leadership role in, not just regionally through the Las Vegas Valley, but through the state as a whole. We have a really good collaboration locally where we're working as groups, all the cities together in Southern Nevada, but really understanding and setting a benchmark. These are the futures, technologies and the future economic opportunities that Nevada has to be able to take a leadership role in. Data will be very important in the future. It's how everything will be driven from how you do your shopping, how you work and play. All of that information will be important, and it'll be how you are able to interact with society as well as the organizations you are associated with. So if we start building a standard now and Nevada takes a leadership role, we're hoping that not only is that good from a technology perspective, but it's also good from an economic development perspective.
And that would be terrific from our point of view to see that kind of leadership. So thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
You have a national perspective on all of this, Barak, and I think that Cox2M is very data-oriented. Tell us about how you see this.
Yeah, and by the way, Michael, it's phenomenal to hear that perspective. And again, another reason why this is a market that is so important for Cox and so much at the forefront of bringing those innovations and those technologies and improvement to your resident experience. for Cox, this is not a new thing. We every day manage very sensitive information, maybe payment addresses, and sometimes what's in your house, etc. Because we serve millions and millions of residences and businesses every day. So the attention that we give to data security, data privacy is utmost critical to our company, and something we've been doing for decades. Again, on a national perspective. I do think that, following up on what Michael said, it's critical to not be afraid of unlocking the tremendous potential that is in data. If you take a blanket approach for a data policy as a city and treat all use cases the same, all providers the same, you might be erring on the side of totally secure, private, but you are leaving a lot of value on the table. That's critical. If you just look at a few of the examples, and it's not just at recent years, if you take an example outside of this market, for example, in Chicago, trying to fight the issue of lead paint poisoning, which, even though was banned in the 70s, was still a major issue for them. They actually took a look at census data, but also at the most sensitive information you can think of, which is the medical records of children throughout the city, in order to create the algorithms and the analytics that narrowed it to where we are most likely to find housing still with lead paint and address that issue. If you look at other, it's still in the healthcare space. If you look at, in Kentucky, you had the city provide, Louisville provide 500 smart inhalers to people with respiratory issues and track that data in order to create the heat maps of air quality. On the transportation side, tremendous example with San Jose and with London, and just across the board, where you actually track very actively where people are going, and the flows and the peak times and the low times in order to improve traffic congestion. So the value is tremendous. I think it comes, and how we think about it, we take a privacy by design, use case by use case. What is exactly the data that we need in order to get the insight that we need that improves your lives and the way you do business? Taking that data, running the data, realizing the insight, and then on the back end, making sure you dispose of it, store it obviously, and then dispose of it carefully. But again, something we've been doing, by the way, not just in the communication industry, but we're also one of the largest players in the automotive industry, in the mobility space, where we hold very sensitive data and realize tremendous value out of it, but do it in a responsible way.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. We'd like to give all of you an opportunity to ask questions of this fantastic panel. There's a microphone down over here and a microphone over there. If you would come up and queue at the microphone, we'd be glad to go and take your questions before the panel ends. But while you're doing that, let me go and ask, you both have international experience of various kinds. I do too. How do you think that the US, Las Vegas, size up compared on the international scale? Let me ask Barak first.
Well, I would say, as someone that grew up a bit far away, Las Vegas was always something that, on an international scale, just you're frankly dying to see, dying to be here, and what you guys have accomplished over the last few decades is just phenomenal. I definitely think that the US is very advanced, and on certain fronts you see that because we have it so great here, frankly, in terms of an infrastructure perspective, we sometimes see that we don't have as much of a burning platform for innovation. If you look at the payments industry, for example, and at certain places on smart city front as well. But overall, I think the US is a leading player and will be a leading player just by nature of the scale and the technology that's coming out of this country.
Great, thank you. Mike?
There's no other place to be. I mean, there's no other city I would even think of other than Las Vegas as a place for innovation and technology in the future. Where else can you see so many great things in an area and so many great people? It's a community, not just an infrastructure. And so there is no other city that I've been to throughout my travels that I wouldn't want to be other than here.
Great. Let's go to microphone 1.
We hear a lot about data breaches where personal information is being stolen. Are there plans? What can be done to protect us in the future?
Brock, you want to grab that one?
Of course. So we invest very heavily, obviously, in privacy and security. There's entire departments at Cox, from the legal side, from the technology side, that focus on that. When we take, for example, in the IoT space, which I can talk to more, if we look at sensors data, it's really about taking a little holistic view and how you test your hardware, your software, your platform, your full stack for security, because every point, like you're saying, every point in that stack can become a breach. So we take the hardest and we leverage the best partners in the market to do the most rigorous hardware testing, software testing. And I do think that leveraging as much open source, I know open source and breach doesn't seem to go together, but as much as you can leverage proven infrastructure, maybe cloud infrastructure when necessary, or others that are used by millions of people, you lower the risk of you having a limited scale that can be more exposed to breaches. It's a real issue, without scaring anyone, when we're looking at the next version of computing and what that does to encryption, I don't see the risk of breaches going away. They may actually accelerate over the next few decades. And it just comes down to dedicating the resources and the experts in the industry to fight fire with fire, basically.
What do you think, Mike?
I'd add it's education. It's a two-way process. You've had companies, the largest of companies, breached that have huge security departments. So to me, it's more about how do we educate the community? How do we get the community involved? So many of us use simple passwords like Oreo. I mean, it's not hard for somebody to then get into a system and do that. No plug for Oreo. I don't have any ties to the cookie industry. But the bottom line is that it's a two-way street. It is partially the responsibility of the agency that's holding the data, whether it be commercial or governmental, but it's also upon all of us as users to use strong passwords. I know they're difficult, but there's better software programs that help you remember your passwords. I still walk around, no matter where I go in the world, and I'll be walking in offices, I see sticky notes with people's passwords on there. All it takes is one person to grab that, they sell it on the dark net, then that's how they get in. Most data breaches are generally from inside components that have been compromised. And so all of us have a duty and responsibility to do a little bit more on our part to ensure the safety, not only of your data, but the people that live in your community and that use the services, same services that you use. But it's something that, again, if you have to ask me from a technology perspective, what keeps me up at night? A breach. I mean, my job lives and dies if I'm breached. Hopefully there's no real wood here. If a job is breached, generally the CIO, the person in charge of technology, is the one that is accountable and moves on. And so that's something that is constantly in the back of my mind, more than anything else, more than system outages, more than doing new technology or ensuring things work. It's the data breach and then the recovery. How do you get through those two processes? And I think from an example in just recent memory, the city of Atlanta was down for almost a month, if not longer, from a malware data breach. Whatever you want to call it, to me, you're out for a month out of pocket. Those are devastating events. And so again, and that was just by a lack. Had there been more education internally about malware, what to click on, what not to click on, and password protection, some of those things could have been mitigated. And so that's where I'm more about education, because it goes everywhere. It can't be denied. It's something you carry with you. And so through that process, through education and outreach, you can make a stronger data policy and hopefully prevent breaches.
And the breaches aren't just on the companies or organizations which are breached. They're also on all of us and the policies that we use. So if we use the same password everywhere, then one data breach can go and turn itself into multiple data breaches. So one of the important things to do is to make sure that you have different passwords for different sites. And it's just like in the federal government, the most closely held secrets are so-called sensitive compartmentalized information, SCI, top secret, secure, and sensitive compartmentalized information. So you need to compartmentalize. That means a different password, a different username maybe even, for each of your identities that you have online so that one data breach can't go across other compartments that you have. I think that's really quite important. Another thing that you can do now increasingly is to have two-factor authentication. So for example, I have an appointment at the University of Utah, and in order to log into my University of Utah account, when I type in my password online, my phone rings and I have to go and press a button on my phone to confirm through a second factor that it was me entering that password. And this kind of technology is available on many credit card sites. Google has a two-factor authentication mechanism that you can use. You can get a hardware token for $50 or even less but get a YubiKey on the net. So there's definitely a role for each person in the audience, every business in the audience, to be able to also work on those breaches. Do we have any other questions? Yes, another question here.
I saw your bio and also a Pepperdine graduate, so go Waves.
All right.
Yay!
But the question is more from an economic standpoint. With the diversity of the cities, and while you are doing in the planning stages of it, how do you see the economies of scale when you start working city to city, or is it the budget and the type of cost that it takes for an infrastructure from the planning perspective? Does that really I sort of say, is it really a cost-effective way of doing it? There's no way of cookie-cuttering these things because every city's different, correct? Are you experiencing any of those challenges?
I experience challenges every day. Some of those, it's like waves coming. But if I understand your question correctly, is how does a city invest in smart city infrastructure or infrastructure in general? Where does that money come from? How does it work? All this technology, it's built on one concept, and I think Jeremy said it again, it's more sustainability. So I first look at, do you want to live in a city with dirt roads and open trench sewers? The answer, none of us would prefer that method. So what we're doing about this new infrastructure is we're building an infrastructure for the next century, for the next generation. So what we have to do is the technology we deploy, it has to provide some kind of efficiency or benefit where we can lower our operating costs and then take that operating savings and then reinvestment. So it's more like you lay a road. You don't just do the entire stretch of road. You start with one block, pave it, get it built out, you prove your process, and then you continue to add on to it. And so that's really the only, I don't think there'll be any smart city or connected city effort where they just go in and do large scale, well, it has been done, that do large scale deployments. One of the hardest things though, when you think about all this infrastructure, is that technology changes so quickly. I remember when I was a kid growing up, my big square TV with the tube in it lasted like 10 years. We never got rid of it. I wanted a bigger TV, but parents would said no. So, but now people change out their TVs every couple of years. Well, it was 55, now I want a 70. Now I want a flat panel. Now I want to roll my TV up and put it in my pocket and take it with me. So there's all types of technology changes that are coming. So the challenge for cities in general is going to be picking the right technology, and that means starting with the right infrastructure. And then how do you deploy this out, keep it scalable, and keep it cost neutral in order to have sustainability?
Great. Let's take our last audience question from microphone 2.
Mike, you talked about improving the quality of living for residents within smart cities. And I'm just curious to know how you see blockchain technology impacting that.
So blockchain technology and helping the community at large, there's lots of opportunity. There's opportunity on the commercial side as well as on the government side. And so I see really government's transition into blockchain will take some time as we have to educate the population more, communicate more, understand more about the processes. But I think if I could have a world where you didn't have to, so if I just asked this group, let me just take a quick deviation. When you want to work with a city today, and you want to pay a traffic bill, that's one login to log into one system. If you want to pay your sewer bill, it's another login. I guarantee everybody in here that interacts with government has multiple user accounts, probably all with the same password. And so that becomes very troublesome to the community. I think how I would like to do is get up in the morning, ask my Alexa or look at my phone and have one login that seamlessly allows me to transact with all government entities seamlessly. Blockchain is part of that process and making that happen. I see that as a huge change. So for the city of Las Vegas, we're undertaking this year, hopefully roll out towards the end of the year, a unified login. One login, you can use your Facebook account, you can use your LinkedIn profile, but one login to log into all city systems, whether it's a pet license, whether it's your sewer bill, whether it's a parking ticket. Please don't get one, but if you do, whatever it is, that is your one interaction to be able to work and communicate with the city. I mean, you don't have 9 logins for Amazon. Why do you need 9 logins to work with the government? And so our undertaking on that is to simplify it, and blockchain will be a major component in making that happen.
Great, thank you very much. So this ends our panel. I do want to go and say, if you are interested in helping Las Vegas be a smarter city, I think that if people would contact Mike and or Joanna Wadsworth, be glad to go and get you to be part of the effort that's going on. If you would like one of the services from Cox, they would be more than willing to talk to you about that. And I think that there's a number of really valuable services there that you could go take a look at. Would you please join me in thanking our panelists?